So good morning, everyone. It's great to have you with us for this webinar on understanding the new Faith and Housing, Yes in God's Backyard bill, particularly for denominations and faith leaders. My name is Sheila Hurley-Hennessy. I am the Director of Faith Organizing for the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We are a statewide advocacy organization who co-led the work on this incredible bill along with our friends at the Commonwealth Housing Coalition and Voice. And it's just been so exciting that after about 4 years, this is going into effect and it's really going to have a positive impact on the need for housing in our communities and supporting faith congregations in their mission. I want to introduce our other panelists today. Um, so first we have Chief Reverend Dr. Rosa Holmes-Turner, who is both a developer and an ordained clergy, active in her Baptist Ministerial Association, and the chief of an Indian tribe here in Southern Virginia. We are so pleased to have you with us. Thank you, Dr. Rosa, Chief Rosa. We also have Nina Janopaul, who is the board president of Virginia Episcopal Real Estate Partners, which works with particularly Episcopal, but open to all congregations on discerning and evaluating and moving toward mission-oriented land use for faith communities. So it's wonderful to have both of you with us. Today's agenda, we're going to go through why congregations are interested in affordable housing, what this call is about, review the new law that Virginia's General Assembly, that Virginia's government just passed that goes into effect at the beginning of next year, and then go over the development process so that you have an understanding. And at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers from all of you as participants, as well as a little bit of next steps from us. So thank you so much. I am going to let Dr. Rosa take the floor and talk about the faith call. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Good morning. Good morning, Sheila, and all of the Virginia Interfaith Network Center for Public Policy for having me on. This is a great opportunity. Housing is near and dear to my heart. I do want to say hello to some of the faith-based entities that I represent as well, the Lebanon Virginia Baptist Association, which is about 18 churches and also 3 Sunday school unions, and also the Faith in Action coalition is located, and it covers 10 pastors and congregations from Isle of Wight, Surrey, Suffolk, Windsor, and Portsmouth areas. So I am glad to be here. Sheila also let you know that I was a principal chief. I'm a principal chief of 2 sister tribes, the Wowaskoyak Indian tribe, which is Isle of Wight County, and the Keokahonic Indian tribe, which is Surrey County, Virginia, on the south side of the James River, as we say. And I'm coming in breaking from the Hampton University's Ministers Conference to spend some time with you. So I am excited about being here. The last person I do want to say hello to is Bishop Susan Haynes from the Episcopal Diocese of the Southeastern Virginia. They are part of our Keokahonic territory. They have Stranko on the James there, and we fellowship together in October at Stranko on the James. So I'm glad to know that the Episcopal Diocese is a part of this as well. So let's talk a little bit. I'm going to go through we're talking about faith and housing, but we're also talking about why pastors and congregations should be focused on housing in their communities. And so I just want to kind of give you a couple things. This is an interfaith gathering. I want to make sure that I let you know about some of the scriptures that I go on and why our organization, Rushmere Community Development Corporation, is focused on housing, affordable housing in our Virginia communities. So one of the ones that I know that we all should know about is our commission on Matthew 25, verses 35 through 40. anything that you're doing in your congregation should be connected with that because that's a part of our mission as missionaries. So what this area that we're focused on is housing. A lot of you all have long time congregations, and you have some like our churches are 100 plus years old. The oldest congregation in our Surrey County community up in Burrillsville is actually Brandon Episcopal Church, which goes all the way back to 1618. So we've been serving for a long time in our communities in these faith-based segments, as well as all the way to my Blackwater Chesapeake location, which is Oak Grove Baptist Church, which was established in 1762. So we have been serving in this segment for a long time. And so when you look at why you should be doing what you're doing, knowing that this is a call, we have a housing shortage. But one of the things, as I know, is Virginia Housing, a new recent graduate of the emerging developers for Virginia Housing, is that we have a clarion call. Your churches know that in your doctrines, and then also when we had the glebes that was in the communities, that one of the things that they said about your parsonages is that if you didn't need your parsonage to take care of your pastor that was serving in your church, that you use it for housing and you use it to support the ministries that you do within your congregational area. The other things that our housing communities and our consortiums know is that every development in Virginia that we do, the church is the moral compass of that housing community. So you all that have lands that have been donated to you by congregants that were in your body of Christ, as they go through, they left you endowments, they left you land, they donated. Some of our communities, our municipalities have land that's been donated to them. So we're now identifying those as places to build affordable housing. That's one of the things that I want the pastors and the clergy and the lay persons to understand, that you have a clarion call. We have housing communities that are coming up now all across. Rushmere CDC has served as housing consultants for about 9 now, with our collaborative partners, utilizing the new market tax credits. And so those things are what we're showing you, is that you have that call. It's a part of your doctrine. It's a part of your service to your community. You know, because when you talk about, most people do food pantries because you're trying to meet the part about, when I was hungry, you fed me. You have your outreaches that you go through. So now we're talking about the subject is, when I was homeless, you provided housing and shelter to me. And so I'm going to go back because I have to bring the history in all the way back when Sir Christopher Lawn and Sir Worsley came and settled in Wauwascaliac, along with Benjamin Sims, who created the first school for the poor in 1634. This has been a mission and a call to the settlers for a long time. And so our other apostle to the Indians that we had was our own apostle, John Eliot. And so he intermarried into our tribes. And so they have been doing housing for a long time. So I want you to just to continue to keep that call going. And then we look at, so why is it? Why is it your mission? I told you a little bit about that. But your mission is also, as you look at your congregations, some of your congregations have thinned out. Some of your congregations may not have youth in them right now. And so you're trying to also address those. But building on the land that you have around your church and creating your housing congregation and allowing your church to be that moral compass to serve the needs of those individuals that come in, you can build in your backyard. Does that mean when we say affordable housing and building housing for the poor, it does not mean building poor housing. So you want to build a quality home, a housing community, a housing development in your home. Where do individuals and organizations like Rushmere Community Development come in at is because we have that moral compass just like you have that moral compass. We have that commission to do just like you have. So while we're helping you to come in to go through the process of zoning and public service and meeting the designs and of your housing communities and connecting with interfaith network public policies like the one with that we have with Virginia Interfaith, that they got the policy through, the law through by coming to make it easier for you to build in your backyard. Because that's been a stigma a long time. It's not in my backyard. You know, when we talk about homeless, we think that that's somebody that was derelict, that went through substance abuse. No, your homeless today are your teachers and educators staying in your storage units, staying in areas that are not designated for habitable spaces because their incomes do not do that. They are individuals that have lost their housing through whatever reasons. So we are looking at a lot of different things. They're your veterans who have served this country faithfully. However, those veterans, whether if it's their PTSD or whatever they have, can't live directly inside the house with their loved ones, but they still want to be connected to their loved ones. And so these are the things that we look at when you're looking at your HUD-VASH programs, your Section 8 programs, and also your ministry. Because the word of God lets you know to always provide housing for your ministers and your lay people that work in your congregations. So those are things that I want to make sure that you understand. This is a truly clarion call and a part of your walk as you're edifying the body of Christ and as you're also serving the Great Commission and making disciples. So as we look at those, I'm saying too, with the housing shortage, yes, we have over, what is it? Is it 200,000 units of housing that's shorted? And so we're having it all over the area in Virginia. So this is not just focused on one denomination. This is focused on everyone. And why are we part of the tribal nation community so compassionate about this? Is because our enrolled members are in your churches. So we are here to support the churches that our enrolled members are members of, whether it's Episcopal, whether it's United Methodist, whether it's Baptist, whether it's Church of God in Christ, whether it's non-denominational, whether it's UCC, whether it's Assemblies of God, whether it's our Catholics and our Catholic Charities Organization. We have enrolled members in your church congregations. And so we are just here as one of your collaborative partners saying, we are here to support you because we have the degrees, we have the licenses in construction and design and engineering. So those things that you may not have being a person, a theologian, we have those in our professions. And so we're here to help. Let me see what else. When you're talking about, also, I told you serving the poor is important, but changing your mindset about what the poor looks like. The poor right now in our communities have $60,000 and $70,000 incomes, but they cannot afford the housing that are going up. When we look at affordable housing, we look at tiny homes, we look at alternative dwelling units, and we also look at those houses that we design and build are between your 600 square foot homes up to 800 square foot homes. So those are still considered those homes that you're talking about under $265,000 because that's what we're having now. We have a crisis going on in Virginia, and the clergy, we, the faith-based community, that's our assignment. So we cannot turn a blind eye to the assignment that God has called us to do. So I want you to get that in your conscious that this is a part of your service to the community. As we look at too, and keep me on time, Sheila, uh, as we looking at too, congregations that want to build housing and the logistics project. It is such an issue when it comes to the logistics and all the dynamics that go into building affordable housing. I want all of you all to go and look at Proverbs 31 in this scenario as well. Because when you look at the Proverbs 31 woman, that woman is not just someone that's quiet sitting in a corner. She is a shrewd project manager. She is a shrewd business owner. She is a shrewd negotiator, buying vineyards and lands and making sure that it's right for the community that she's serving and all that serve within her household. She is a shrewd employer where she's working with her employees, making sure not just her household is in order, but making sure that her employees have a quality of life as well. And so she also plans sometimes in her operation management skills that she's going through at night and she's making sure that everything in the dynamics of her household is in order, but she's also making sure that while she's doing her planning and her logistics for her next day, and not just the next day, but for the next 7 generations, as we as our tribes do as well, she's also that dynamic public relations representative for her husband when her husband goes out into the gates. She's making sure that he's known. She's making sure that that speech that he may have to give in public has already gone through the dynamics of what his audience is going to look like when she goes in and he goes in and sits among the gates. Look at that Proverbs 31 woman. You all that are sitting up here, a lot of you all are Proverbs 31 women. And it doesn't mean that you're doing so much that you don't take the time in your pastoral care to take care of yourself, that you need to take care of yourself when you're planning your logistics and you're being that soccer mom and you're being that basketball mom and you're being that cheerleader mom going through to do the things that you have to do. And that does relate to housing because your household is your logistic territory, your operations command, that you make sure things are in order. Many of you are working in your faith based communities. You are doing things behind the scenes that people never tell you thank you. But I'm saying thank you today because what you do behind the scenes in your logistical warehouses of those food pantries and those food banks and those transportation ministries are a part of this housing dynamic plan because you got to get people in order and you got to keep the things going on when you're planning your logistical things. All of you also, you have had your professional careers. And I just said this yesterday in the social entrepreneurship workshop yesterday at the Hampton Minister Conference, where I let them know that don't just leave your work profession at the front door of the church. Bring it in because we need the skills and ability that you do in your Navy careers, in your construction careers, in your human resources career. Those things are needed now in your housing, affordable housing communities, because all of those are logistical items that are needed. Accounting is a must. If you're getting these grants, it's going to come. Don't be scared to receive a grant because in that grant, then all you're doing is conveying and converting over the mindset of stewardship into grants management. So just do what you say you're going to do in that grant proposal that the Interfaith Network may write or anything else may come. So I just want you all to know what those things are doing. And I hope I'm touching the areas that you needed me to touch, Sheila. But just know that I'm just saying, on behalf of our tribes, on behalf of the faith based communities, on behalf of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia, we need the clergy and we need the faith based community to come together and accept the Clarion Call to build affordable housing in your backyard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Rosa. And you did an amazing job, especially given how many things you're juggling this week. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Um, and as Pastor Rosa said, like there is this clear, I love that, the clarion call of mission to take care of affordable housing, to provide for those in need. But there is also this clarion call of being good stewards, which is sort of where I'm going to pick up. And what this bill that we helped advocate, Yes in God's Backyard or Faith in Housing, was here to address this year. So it is true that faith communities have a strong moral call to do justice and to care for neighbor. It is also true that congregations see the need for affordable housing from a logistical perspective. As Pastor said, particularly among sort of mainline Christian traditions, there is a shrinking affiliation and attendance and membership in a lot of faith communities, particularly churches. In addition, faith communities have a lot of land, sometimes too much land. Um, you can see up on the top right here the Pew church membership among US adults, which in the 40s was 73% and in 2020 was 47%. But down here on this bottom right, you can see the acres of land owned by faith communities in Virginia, provided by our friends at Housing Forward. And this shows how much exists. You know, churches and congregations were often one of the first buildings in a new community. And so it was the 1800s, and there was a rural part around Richmond. So a congregation, say in Chesterfield County or in Albemarle County outside of Charlottesville, could have 5 acres of land. And these days, that area has grown up in such a large way that though the faith community might only be using half an acre, they still own those 5 acres, and that could be put to a different use. One other beautiful thing about congregations is that they're all over Virginia. Housing is not just an urban problem, it is not just a rural problem, and faith communities are uniquely situated to address that. Um, as you can see here. So the bill, Faith and Housing, allowed for by right zoning. Zoning is something that may or may not be a familiar concept. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a review on what does zoning mean. So zoning determines what you can do on a particular piece of land. That is at its most central. Historically, there are 3 main zones: residential, where people can live; commercial, where you can sell stuff. So that's shops, that's restaurants, that's often schools and lawyer offices. And then there's industrial, and that's where you can build stuff. So that's factories and that's etc. There's also mixed use, where some combination of those is permitted. However, you may be aware that zoning laws came about in approximately the 1950s and 60s, just as redlining and was starting to become illegal. So zoning laws were a creative way of saying, hey, so we can't tell banks who they're allowed to lend money to, but we can zone certain areas to be harder to build in and certain areas to be easier to build in. And that shows, particularly in the older zoning maps. Right now, Virginia Interfaith's office is based in the city of Richmond, and Richmond is updating their zoning code for the first time in 50 years. So you can imagine that in the 1970s, the zoning code was a lot more exclusive than we'd like it to be today. One other piece of this is that the most expensive type of housing to build is single family residential. A detached house is more expensive than a duplex because you're using a similar amount of land and a similar amount of resources, but only one family can live there instead of 2 families. And it does not perfectly scale, but single family housing is more expensive than mixed use, and it is more expensive than multifamily. And so zoning was a way of excluding people based on economics rather than race, which is still today, unfortunately, too strong of a correlation for us to be okay with. In order to build something that is not automatically allowed in your zoning district, or I'd say the vast majority of churches, according to this study by Housing Forward Virginia, are zoned single family residential or agricultural, but that's a different case. And they are grandfathered in by this idea that you get to keep whatever was already built on the land when the zoning was written. In order to build something that is not automatically allowed by zoning code, you have to go through a rezoning or a special use permit or a conditional use permit process. And that involves a lot of public hearings, and it is not guaranteed until about the third vote. So a rezoning process takes between 3 months at the very, 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 very fastest end, and everyone's very excited about this, to more than 3 years, which happened to a faith community up in Fredericksburg over the last 4 years. They had to go through an extensive rezoning process in order to respond to their ministerial call to help the population that was currently experiencing homelessness. Finally, that rezoning has been approved up in Fredericksburg, but going through 3+ years of rezoning with that uncertainty hanging over your heads is not something a lot of congregations have energy or money or time for. Oftentimes, faith communities want to do this housing ministry because they have that ministerial call, but they may or may not. But in order to do the rezoning, you need to do a lot of pre-work, creating your plan, determining what you would want to build there, how much you would want to build there, what that would cost. And that takes a lot of energy and money. For that all to be potentially denied in the final hearing before City Council or the County Board of Supervisors. So you could go through a 3-year process and then have it all go down the drain. So the beautiful thing about this faith and housing bill that just passed Virginia's General Assembly in February of this year, was signed by the governor in March and goes into effect next January, is that it automatically gives that multifamily zoning designation for land owned by congregations. Technically, because we're Virginia, it's not just congregations, it's land owned by property tax exempt nonprofit organizations. It changes it from a rezoning approval to an administrative approval. So that means you still have to follow all the safety regulations, but you do not need to go through this extremely long, drawn out process that involves public hearings. And as Pastor Chief Rosa said, this NIMBY attitude, this idea of not in my backyard, is in every neighborhood. People are scared of change and scared of what affordable housing will do and will bring. And so they don't want to see new housing in their neighborhood, despite the fact that the research says it's a good thing. So administrative approval reduces the opportunity for the community to scuttle it and allows congregations to live their mission more easily. I also wanted to give a shout out to our coalition partners who really helped a ton in this work. Commonwealth Housing Coalition, Voice, I see you on the call, James, which is a Northern Virginia interfaith community organizing group, and our Friends of Virginia Interfaith. This picture is from a hearing, I think last year, where we, for the Faith and Housing Bill, we got Episcopals, Catholics, Baptists on that gathering, and it was just a really lovely time. We're glad it finally got through. So what does the new law do exactly? Well, according to this bill carried by Delegate Cole and Senator McPike, it is a base plus context perspective on zoning. So faith communities are allowed to build 20 units per acre and up to 45 feet of height. That works out to 3 stories. And 20 units per acre could be 10 duplexes, could be a small apartment complex. That's by right. Or if there is a larger or more dense building nearby, you can build to the greatest density or greatest height within 500 feet. So Friends at Voice created this amazing graphic. I will send it out. I will share it with all of you. 45 feet of height by right, this is what that looks like. You would not be appalled to see this driving down a residential street. Here's a church, here's a few single-family homes, easy. There are limitations around historic districts, so you can't build to the highest building in a historic district. You get a max of 60 feet in height, which works out to about 5 stories. But this again is what that would look like in downtown Richmond. It's still perfectly within the context of the neighborhood. And finally, again, the base plus context, if there's a super tall building nearby, you can build to the height of that tallest building. Again, in the center, in a city center where everything else is 10 stories, you're not mad about seeing another 10-story building. So this is sort of what's allowed. There are, as I mentioned, limitations around historic districts, military installations, and industrial uses. We don't want to build affordable housing across the street from a tire production factory where there are cancerous chemicals in the ground, et cetera. That was the original point of zoning, and there's good reason for it. Um, and this process still maintains safety and environmental reviews by local government. But it is a huge step forward in allowing congregations and denominations like you all to live their mission. Um, One note, this law has what's called a delayed enactment, which means it goes into effect January of 2027. However, I'm about to turn it over to Nina, who's going to take you through what the process looks like for developing affordable housing. In order to get your local land use approval in January of 2027, or even in June of 2027, it is important to start discernment and the brainstorming process now. It takes a long time, and nothing is as quick as Extreme Makeover Home Edition makes it seem. So it is deeply important that you, as leaders in your faith community, are starting to think about what you would like to see from the Faith and Housing Bill. And if you're in a denominational context, are there a few churches or a few congregations within your purview who might be interested in developing land? How can we begin that conversation as soon as possible to make sure that they can participate in this wonderful new bill? So thank you so much. Again, we will have questions at the end. Feel free to throw notes in the chat so you don't forget about your question. And I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Nina.
Hopeful. I have started a slide deck here. Again, my name is Nina Janopaul, and currently I am the president of the Board of Trustees of Virginia Episcopal Real Estate Partners. As Sheila mentions, we're a nonprofit related to the Diocese of Virginia, and we help congregations to think through and reimagine mission uses of their real estate. But in my prior life, I was the CEO of an affordable housing development organization based in Nova and worked with 3 congregations to redevelop their sites for affordable housing. So I know a lot about this journey. Our mission, again, is to help our congregations. The Diocese of Virginia has 173 congregations. That represents, interesting to me, $600 million of assessed value in real estate. Just think about that, right? Put all of our congregations together, all of the faith communities in Virginia. We're sitting on this great gift. I love the way Chief Holmes talked about it. This is a gift we have from our ancestors. They gave us this land and these buildings. And what are we doing about that? Are we good stewards of that? So our vision is a diocese where every congregation boldly reimagines its buildings and land as tools for ministry. And that is both for financial sustainability and for serving their community. I want to point out we got a grant from Virginia Housing to build a very robust website. So please go there. It's called VEREP.org. I have that in small letters here on the screen. And there we have case studies and reports and educational materials. There is a wealth of information on this field of mission real estate for congregations. There are folks that are doing it in New York, in Michigan. So when you start this journey, do your homework. There is a lot of lessons to be learned and a lot of tools out there. I won't dive into any in specific, but again, our website, we tried to do a pretty comprehensive list and resources of what's out there. We are also, and I won't take a lot of time on this because that's not the point of this seminar, but I think it's an interesting concept for judicatories. In other words, your governing bodies to help your congregations to think through this process. This is very complicated, and often a congregation can't do it all on their own. So I'll just give a couple examples. We're working with 20 congregations in the Diocese of Virginia. First one I'm listing here, Christ Ascension, right in VICPP's hometown of Richmond. We've been working with them a couple of years. They have this calling to do affordable housing, but it's a small site. Is it going to work? It's a very iterative process, even once you discern. Working with St. Martin de Porres. Interesting example for me because they merged three churches. Now you have more land than you had thought before. You're a small congregation, but how do you use that extra real estate that is no longer an active daily part of your own congregation? And I also want to talk about we work with congregations on all kinds of ways to reimagine their real estate. And sometimes that's a stepping stone to affordable housing. Now, we don't have a lot of time here because they put a sunset clause on this legislation. So hopefully the advocates will take that off. But one thing I think congregations can sometimes do is take a step in this direction and get used to the idea of, well, we never have had a child care on site. We're going to add a child care on site or a food pantry or, a winter shelter for the unhoused. There are ways to kind of get your congregation in alignment on this concept of reimagining your space because for affordable housing can be quite hard. Again, Dr. Holmes-Turner talked a lot about why do this, but not only does the faith community own a lot of land, but you can be an innovator in this space. There are a lot of needs that the conventional, even affordable housing world, of which I was a part of, can't always focus on. Special needs housing, housing for the unhomed. This is really an opportunity, as she said, your clarion call. If you have underutilized land, is there a way to turn that into a gift for people that otherwise wouldn't have any home? There's a lot of great examples out there, by the way. There's a tiny home group that works in Montana. So there's a lot of creativity in this space. And again, I won't duplicate a lot of this, but there are congregations that look at this as a way to fund capital replacement costs. You have an aging building that sometimes works, doesn't always work. The math doesn't always work, but also a way to be more than just a Band-Aid. I like this idea of, give a person a fish they eat for a day, give them a fishing pole they might eat for a lifetime. Housing can really be stabilizing for individuals that are struggling from a number of needs. And I'm also quite excited. Some of the churches that I worked with have turned their relationship to their housing partner into a vocation. They see their congregation as including the residents of the building adjacent. That's a pretty exciting expansion, particularly if you're a shrinking congregation and wondering if you're still relevant. Well, here you are. You're relevant with your residents. So I created this kind of concept of 7 stages of development. And there's no magic to it, but how do you think about this in stages? And this is the first stage and the most important. And as Sheila said, get on it now if you haven't started, because it may take a while, it may take a year, but discern within your community, is this your calling? And discern with the outside community, what human needs are your congregation could fulfill. It's a real dialogue, and you need to hear everybody. And I want to say it's very important that in this process, you build this consensus. You build a dream, because this is a long journey and a hard journey, and you can't do it without the congregation being behind you. And it will come up later if you shortcut this step. I will tell you, I've worked with congregations that thought they were ready because their elected body supported it, because their vision team supported it. And then when it came time for a congregational vote, a lot of people came out of the woodwork and said, that's not my vision. Or when there was a hard decision to make, gosh, we thought we could build a 150-seat sanctuary in this redevelopment. We can only do 100 seats. And all of a sudden people start stepping away and saying, well, that's not good enough, right? So you need to have a clear vision, a clear idea of what your minimums are, what are your goals, and a commitment so strong, you're willing to give up some of your past to make this future happen. And I strongly recommend a third-party consultant in this space. There's also a couple of organizations that run cohorts. They're again on our website. There's a group that has a curriculum for it. It's called Rooted Good. Again, it's on our website. So there are a lot of ways to go through this process, but again, don't skip this process. It's very important. Second step, and this has got to be one of my favorite words, iterative, right? You have to go back and forth between discernment and feasibility. If you discern your call is to build 300 units of senior affordable housing, and you're in a historic district, where you can only have 8,000 square feet of land, that's not a feasible model, right? So you've got to match your physical feasibility with your vision. And I strongly urge a feasibility study. Often, the affordable housing developers in our state, the nonprofits in particular, and I saw at least a couple on this call, Bay Aging is on the call. I also saw Alice Hogan from Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Advocates. So there are groups that can come and help you do this feasibility analysis. And if you don't know some of them, I think Sheila can connect you with some as well. Enterprise is a big national organization that's in this space. I put here in this slide, get an appraisal, but actually I pivoted on that. I've ordered a number of appraisals for our congregations, and I'm having better, more market relevant reports by getting what's called a broker opinion of value from a couple commercial real estate brokers. They know what's selling in the community. Now, why is this important? You want to do your feasibility for your affordable housing, but it's also important for your congregation to be fully aware of what the value of your real estate is. You may not get that full value in this affordable housing development, but you should know that. It needs to be an informed decision. And I will tell you, I'm working with one congregation, their broker opinion of value, they think they can sell it for $2 million, but maybe only build 20 or 30 affordable units. Is that $2 million? Is that fungible? Is that money that you could use in another way? Donate it to an affordable housing project down the street. So I think it's just an important part of the step of feasibility and analysis. My third step, and also this is an important step, you need an internal team as well as an external team. So your internal team are people that are your trusted advisors, hopefully within your congregation. If not, talk to your sister congregation, talk to your judicatory, talk to your community foundation. Sometimes you can get people to volunteer because they want to help you in this work of discerning and doing affordable housing. But get on your team, experts in finance and legal and real estate development, savvy people that are willing to lean into this process and be your volunteers and your eyes and ears, because it's very complicated stuff. And you want an internal team that's able to commit to the journey that you're going on. And then your external team. And I always recommend getting competitive proposals for a development partner. There's a lot of good people out there in this space. You heard from one this morning, Rushmere, CDC. There are large ones, there are small ones. Some people have had successful experiences working with for-profit developers. I have a preference for nonprofit developers just because it is a marriage. It is a relationship that's going to go on for decades. So a nonprofit developer, you might feel you've got a little bit more of a relationship to not just the current CEO, but also the board and their vision. But do a request for proposals. Get a competitive proposal to do your project. And often that can be a group that's done your feasibility analysis for no obligation, but you talk to two or three. And really important is an experienced real estate attorney, because again, it's a long journey and you want documentation that anticipates what's coming up and anticipates the bumps too. Now, secure your approvals. And Sheila talked earlier about risk. I'm a big believer in align your risk with your development partner. They should be undertaking this pre-development costs, and there are a lot of them before you can apply for your funding and get a secured project. This bill has significantly improved the time for entitlements. So hopefully there aren't these 3 years of waiting and not being sure that you can get a project through, but there's still risk and there's still pre-development expenses. During that process, so maybe the discernment is a year, maybe building your teams and your feasibility study, you can do that within the same year. Maybe that's a second year. This approval process hopefully is shortened. Hopefully it's not 3 years, but it's also going to be some number of months. For example, one of the major tools for funding affordable housing, the 9% low-income housing tax credit, only you can apply once a year. And you apply in March and you don't hear till June. So this takes time. But oh, and think through your structure. We just actually have a study that came out of Rutgers University. It'll be on our website. That analyzed 200 affordable housing projects around the country. Interesting to me, the majority of them were ground leases. So the congregation wanted to keep ownership of the land, but set up a structure where the developer would actually take the ownership of the buildings through a ground lease. And that's important because they need to demonstrate that they can comply with all the affordable housing rules for 30, 45, 60 years. But you rely on a good partner. That's I think really important. There are people that do this every day. It's very complicated. And the approval process really should be hopefully shorter, but it's still maybe a year, maybe 2 years. Design and construction, after full approvals, the developer needs to develop a full set of construction documents. That takes the architects and engineers some time, maybe 6 months. The permit process can take another 6 months. So that's going to be a journey in itself, pre-construction. You've got all your approvals, you know you've got a fixed deal, but there's some time before you can actually break ground. Breaking ground is probably another 2 years. So again, I'm telling you this long journey here. One piece is if you are co-locating with this affordable housing, I think it's important. Again, your internal team might have this skill, or maybe you hire someone who's your own interior designer to make sure that the space that's being built, co-located with the affordable housing, meets your needs. Very important is a relocation plan. During some period of time, you may have your space out of commission. If you're not building on excess land, but you're actually demolishing your facility. So important to keep continuity for the congregation. This can be a little rough. I've seen some congregations really struggle during that construction period, which again, for a commercial project could be 2 years. Next to last, operations. You need to, as part of your evaluation, find a development partner that you are comfortable living with for the next 30 years and that they're skilled in working with residents, they're humane, they're caring, but they're also financially astute and they have a good track record. And you need to figure out how you're going to fund and maintain the church's own facilities. Do you have a new building? It might lower your operating costs, but you still got to think through that future path. And I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite congregations, Arlington Presbyterian Church, really is engaged with the residents of the housing property to be their expanded service arm. And they care about them, as they say, as part of their flock. It's a very exciting thing to see that partnership. So think ahead. And that could be something you start even in your discernment phase. Maybe you want to partner with your future partner and do some services in another of their sites. Get to know residents. I think that's an exciting part of this faith opportunity. It's not just about the land and the money, but also maybe about being engaged and in community with people who are in need. And that's the Matthew 25 message, right? There might be other needs they have, food or healthcare. Can you be part of that? And number 7, my favorite, celebrate. And I put this at the end, but it's not just at the end. When you when you decide you've got your housing, you've got your vision, celebrate. When you decide you've got your housing partner, celebrate. When you get your approval, celebrate. Because it's a long journey. And I think it's important. This is part of our faith work, right? To show gratitude and to give thanks. Give thanks to all the people involved. It's a very complicated process. And I know Sheila's getting anxious here. So just a couple final suggestions. Patience, set your priorities, be clear about what you're trying to achieve, limit your risk exposure, and bring love and enthusiasm and prayer to this process. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Nina. I apologize. I hope I wasn't looking too sassy. You did an amazing job. It is a complicated and complex process, and I am so grateful for your expertise here. I'm going to bring back up myself and Chief Rosa to answer questions. I know I saw one in the chat already, so I'll start with that one. And if folks want to either raise your physical or your Zoom hand, or you are welcome to write a question in the chat. Ellen, I see your hand up, but I can't remember who. It was Neil who wrote the question in the chat, so I'm going to do Neil first and then circle around to you, Ellen. Neil asked about ownership, partnership, and joint venture. basically, if it is the being a property tax exempt nonprofit that gives you the permission to do this increased density, how do you navigate the owner operator uh, process, because a congregation probably isn't going to be a property manager? And Nina, you talked about this a little bit with ground leases, but I'd love just briefly any additional thoughts, and if Chief Rosa, you'd like to weigh anything.
Well, it's very clear in the legislation that once you do this development, it actually becomes a taxable parcel of land. And there's a lot of compliance involved with affordable housing, depending on your financing tools and other things, but there's compliance even just within this legislation. So I know there's groups that have done joint ventures. I think the most common, again, as I mentioned, was the ground lease. There's some groups that said, I just want to be done with this. Maybe you're relocating. Maybe it's time for the congregation to start in a new place. There are a few that have done for sale as well. And I believe that the exemption holds. I shouldn't speak to that. I don't know that. But anyway, the ground lease will definitely work. And some have done joint ventures. Joint ventures sometimes, though, means you're getting that risk pulled back onto the congregation. You may or may not be comfortable with that.
And I'll chime in too. Nina said something very important when she was doing her presentation: prayer and discernment. Before you, and again, my for-profit life is design build and federal contracting, state contracting. And I used to be, when I worked 20 years in the shipbuilding manufacturing industry, I was a procurement officer, helping with small businesses doing contracts with our big companies. So one of the things I always look at when it comes to joint ventures, be mindful of a joint venture when you're a nonprofit or faith-based. They can be done, but what we do a lot of times are collaborative partnerships, collaborative agreements that would spell out in your MOU, your memorandum of understanding, what is it that if you're getting a developer, what is it that the developer is responsible for, and what is the faith-based community is responsible for. Also, you're looking at developers, like even when I used to do, if I don't know how many of you are from the Hampton Roads area, if you've ever been to the Hilton, the Norfolk Hilton Hotel on Main Street. I served as a project manager for that. And so when you're looking at buildings like that, if you're getting new market tax credits, if you're getting low income funding to help work on your projects, those grant funds usually spell out how you can collaborate, what can be done, so that you're always compliant. So Nina also said before about risk. You can also put on your team what we have, like I'm doing a highway heavy project in the city of Richmond. Um, Sometimes you may need to put a construction manager at risk on your team. That would be that construction manager that help you as a faith-based organization to navigate through all the risks that would come up in your project. That construction manager at risk individual has to be, first of all, a licensed contractor, or have some type of state contracting credential. And that way, when you're going through your process, they are usually there's usually a fee that's usually included in your project, but it's usually between 6 and 8% of whatever the overall cost of the project is. But that construction manager at risk helps you with that. So I think with the interfaith collaborative individuals you all have connected, I know all of us would be willing to help you identify, go through and help you with your process so you can assess what's the best for yourself and for your church. The last thing I wanted to say, and I think I forgot to say it earlier, when it came to your church body. So there are examples that would show you that if your church body had maybe, it's dwindled down to like 25 to 35 membership right now, congregations that implemented their housing projects. There's one in DC that we highlighted yesterday. They were a historical church. So what they did, they kept the church. It was only like 35 members at the time that they started. And I think they were United Methodists. And so what they did in there, it went from 35 congregations after they started interacting with the community to find out what the community need. It went from 35 to 400 to now 2,000 members in their congregation because they implemented and identified the needs of their community. And those needs showed that they were friendly, because it always say, in order to be, to gain friends, you got to become friendly. And it also, what does Jesus say? He said, who is your neighbor? Your
Mhm.
neighbor is whoever your congregation is set out to serve.
I
So
think
that's the thing.
beautiful. I know we are very, very close on 11 a.m. Nina, Chief Rosa, are you all available to hang out a few more minutes and answer a few more questions?
We
Okay.
are, and I
So
am for a
I'm
little
gonna
bit, but I can also put it in the chat, my contact info.
So, Alan, I want to make sure we get to you. And like I mentioned in the chat, I will be sending a follow-up email with this recording and other resources. Alan, what's your question?
My question, it's not so much a question. For one, I just wanted to say thank you to Nina and Chief Rosa and to you, Sheila. This has been extremely eye-opening, but on top of that, powerful, speakers.
Thank you, Nina. And I'm just going to say one more thing. I threw it in the chat, but one cool thing about this new law is that it is, some folks do just think of affordable housing as those big multifamily projects, 50 units, 100 units, et cetera. And that is often the case in Northern Virginia or in the city of Richmond. But something like a habitat development or working on uh, home ownership or working with single family houses or duplexes or quadplexes, you can use low income housing tax credits, the federal tax credits, but you can also do this with private funding and a rectory that you haven't been using. There is a lot of possibilities under this law, and we'd love to talk more. Okay, just wrapping up here. A few more things, and I will send this all in an email. But to conclude, so grateful that you all are here. So grateful we did have representation from, I think, 8 different judicatories and denominational leaders, and looking forward to how we can work together. I will be sending some resources from Rushmere, from VEREP, and from Virginia Interfaith. I would also like to invite you, if there are particular congregations that come to mind, either who are already considering affordable housing but don't know where to start, or who might be good contenders, if you're a diocese or a presbytery and there's some faith communities who are thinking about merging, and so you'll have an extra piece of land there. I'd love to talk more about those possibilities. VICPP will be having a few more webinars later in the summer, and we will keep you informed of those. And again, thank you for your time on this lovely Wednesday morning. I hope you have a beautiful rest of the week. Have a good one.